The biggest thing that you need to understand about life is pain is pleasure, pleasure is pain. And I feel like that it doesn't exactly fit. I just made that up so that it can rhyme. But in reality, it would be more like pain is happiness, pleasure is regret. So, how this ends up is what this actually means is if you take any activity in your life, any activity that you can think of that induces pain. So it's not necessarily that you are getting physically hurt and you are damaged and you can feel the pain. It's not literally that. It's not just getting physically hurt, but it's pain in this context means that the activity involves suffering. It involves some amount of friction. So you don't initially want to do it. So the activity is hard. It's hard to do. It's difficult. It involves some amount of toughness. It's rigorous, right? It will be demanding on your body or your mind or both of them. So any kind of activity that is like that can be said to be in the pain category of activities. So pain activities can involve like going to the gym, or working out at home, doing cardio, or it's not just the physical activities that go into the pain category. It's also like having a good sleep schedule. That's a pain activity. And having a good diet. That's a pain activity. And having appropriate amounts of sunlight throughout the day. That's a pain activity. Having reading books, that's a pain activity. Meditation, that's a pain activity. Because any kind of activity that you initially do not want to do it just as it is, and you do not enjoy it from the get go, and it is a bit right involving friction, right? That you don't want to just always want to do it, and it's like not always involving suffering, but it's just that it's hard to do. It's not that easy, and many people don't do it, right? And it can be journaling, it can be critical thinking, it can be solving exam papers, it can be studying, it can be boxing. So pain activities are those that you know you do not get immediate pleasure from. These are activities that just involve some amount of hard work and discipline, and when you do them, when the task is completed, you feel fulfilled. You have this amount of satisfaction and happiness that you have achieved something, and it just keeps you going, right? So like the happiness stays for you like the if let's say you complete a gym workout today, it's while doing the gym workout, it will be hard, it will be strenuous, and you have to push yourself, right? But after you have completed the workout, the achievement that you did it today, you checked the day off, and that is what will make you feel happy, and it will carry on. It will That happiness will be there for today and for tomorrow too. And again, tomorrow if you do a workout, you will again have that happiness till to day before tomorrow, right? So pain activities are the ones that give you delayed gratification. So any activity that you do that involves some amount of pain, it can literally be washing the dishes, it can be that, or it can be cooking food too. Like just activities that involve some amount of hard work, and like they are not easy to do, it's challenging, and you don't want to like immediately do them. It's not like yes, I want to do this, right? But sometimes obviously you might just feel like if you are habitual to the gym that you're always excited to go to the gym, but still it would be counted as a pain activity. So I mean, you can turn pain activities into like enjoying them after some amount of time, but the point is those are still like pain activities, right? So these kind of activities give you happiness in the end. And pleasure activities are the ones that not necessarily you might just gain pleasure from them every time, but you know you your brain perceives it as a pleasure activity, and you are motivated to do it to get the pleasure, but you might not even end up getting the pleasure after doing the activities. So the pleasure activities are like very easy to do. Pleasure activities do not involve much friction, so like it means that yeah, like if you're someone who's on self-improvement and you do not want to do like activities that involve pleasure, then you can say there's resistance to it, but that's not like and that's a build up of resistance. Like you build that willpower up over time, right? You initially didn't have it for the pleasure activities, so pleasure activities are the ones that are easy to do. You're not hesitant to do them. Like your brain wants to do it, but you might be against it because of your own willpower and your own mental strength and your own knowledge and your own experience. So pleasure activities involve something like watching porn, or playing video games or watching a movie or eating junk food. Or more pleasure activities would be something like having random thoughts. That's a pleasure. That's a pleasure activity. Like it's easy to do. You don't have any friction to do it, and you just like having random thoughts throughout the day is not some kind of activity that involves some amount of pain, right? In this context, it is just pleasure, right? Having random thoughts is a pleasure activity. So what pleasure activities do is they give you kind of some amount of pleasure in the moment. So they are instant gratification. They like make you feel happy instantly. But as soon as you're done with the activity, like if you do it for half an hour, after that half an hour, you do not feel good. You will like mostly just feel guilty for doing it. You will regret that you did it, and you would like have this feeling of sadness. Correct. So pleasure actually induces pain. Pleasure makes you regret it. So any kind of activity that will involve pleasure will just, in the end make you regret it, feel bad for it, and you would not want to do it again. But the next time too, when you have the urge, your brain will just automatically, if you do not have enough amount of willpower, your brain will just convince you that you should, go for the pleasure activity and do it. And you will, and sometimes it's like you're so much against your brain that even if you agree to do that pleasure activity, you do not gain any amount of pleasure from it. So sometimes it's like if you are eating junk food, right, and you had like if you are on a diet, you're trying to avoid junk food, you had a craving, you had some amount of junk food, like it might just be the case that you do not even gain pleasure from it at that point, because um, you just consciously you do know that you cheated on your diet and you had the junk food because you had the craving, which was totally wrong. And therefore you are like, you're not even gaining pleasure while doing the activity, like, and then later on obviously there will be regret and guilt for it. So if you really want to analyze this properly, you can literally create an entire list of activities, but it will obviously take some amount of time, half an hour if you want to do it. And just but this will be a good activity, and like you will like realize a lot of things and learn a lot of things just by doing it. Okay, so some one actionable step that you can take right now is take a piece of paper and a pen and write down all of the activities that involve pain in your life, and all of the activities that involve pleasure in your life. So pleasure is not always that it will give you pleasure, and pain is not always that it will directly give you pain. It's just about how easy it is to do, how hard it is to do. Pain will be harder, pain will have more resistance. Pleasure is easier, pain pleasure has less resistance. And pain is something that in the end gives you happiness, and you are like completely conscious of it, and you accept it, that pain activity is your identity. And with pleasure activities, it's like in the end it just gives you sadness, it just makes you regret it later. With the pleasure activity, it's like you do not accept it. I mean, you do not accept it as your identity. You don't want to be like identified with that activity, but you still do it because it's just a urge in a way. So you have all the activities that have pain on one side, and on one side of the paper you have all of the activities that have pleasure. What you will realize is, if you do all of the pain activities and none of the pleasure activities, then you will have all amount of happiness and no regret at all with your life. Okay, if you just continuously keep doing it. And obviously the ratio is always not one like you cannot make the percentage just 100 percentage that you're doing all pain activities and no pleasure activities. You cannot get to that perfection if you aren't at that level right now. And but if you increase the ratio of the amount of pain activities you do compared to the amount of pleasure activities you do, your happiness will necessarily increase. So just keep in mind, every activity that will involve pain will give you happiness, and every activity that will involve pleasure will just make you regret it in the end. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching.